Moving on, China has retaliated against American President Donald Trump's move to hike tariffs up to 104%. In turn, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has announced a levy of 84% tariffs on US goods, up from the previous 34%, emphasizing that it will never accept US's behavior, and China has maintained that these additional tariffs will be imposed on goods from America from 10th of April. Additionally, Chinese Commerce Ministry has announced that it has added 12 US entities to its exports control list, while including 6 American entities to its unreliable entity list. Soon after the announcement, the US stock index futures have taken a sharp dive. Dow futures is down 0.84%, Nasdaq has slipped 1.54%, and S&P 500 has plummeted by 1.57%. That's not all. The State Council Information Office of China has released a white paper outlining China's stance on economic and trade issues with America. It has stressed the importance of talks between the two sides based on mutual respect and win-win cooperation. Additionally, China has urged India to join hands in resisting what it terms the abuse of tariffs by America. In fact, we are getting to know that the European Union has also taken revenge on Donald Trump's metals tariffs by approving a retaliation on around 21 billion euros of US products. This decision has been taken after a vote by approval by EU parliamentarians. A majority of the EU's 27 member states voted in favor of the penalties, some of which will start taking effect in mid-April. The tariffs will target politically sensitive American states that include products such as soybean from Louisiana, home to US House Speaker Mike Johnson, as well as diamonds, agricultural products, poultry and motorcycles. The European Commission, the bloc's executive arm, has said that the countermeasures can be suspended at any time should America agree to a fair and balanced negotiated outcome. The move adds to the growing transatlantic trade war, with America also having supplied a universal 20% tariff on nearly all European exports, as well as separate 25% duty on cars and some auto parts. Trump has said he'll announce additional tariffs on lumber, semiconductor chips and pharmaceutical products as well. All of Trump's new tariffs have hitting around 380 billion euro of EU goods. I'm going to start my conversation. Joining me on the telecast quickly, Ambassador Basuti Mukherjee. Thanks for joining me. And Ambassador Mukherjee, in wake of the global trade war, it looks like the highlight of this battle that is going to be long drawn is China and America. But latest information coming in that European Union has also levied heavy tariffs on the Trump administration on a number of goods, right from agricultural produce, the likes of soya bean, to motorcycles, to beauty products as well. How is this going to impact America?
We have to wait and see how that happens, but let us not forget that United States is a very large economy, and European Union will be much more affected than United States. European Union would be well advised to try to enter into talks with the Americans, trade talks with the Americans, instead of taking such a confrontational approach, which I heard the EU representative saying that if you touch one European country, you touch the entire European Union. The issue is that the EU has also been very protectionist about its own products. Let's not forget, Megha, that we've been trying to negotiate an FTA with the EU for more than 12 years now, and they have refused to give any space to the fact that we are an emerging economy and we cannot open up our economy to a fully developed block of countries the way they want us to do. And it's on agriculture, actually, that they want us to completely open up our entire agricultural sector to the European Union. So, with due respect, Megha, I think that ultimately the EU will have to back down, because they stand to lose much more than the Americans. As far as China is concerned, this seems to be going to a very high decibel level, which is alarming because it could impact the global economy. So I do hope that the two sides, after having reached these very high decibel levels, calm down and also talk to each other to see how they can manage. But it is a fact that even right from the time of President Biden, the Americans had been trying to develop supply chains separate from China because they were aware of the fact that such an excessive dependence on China was not good in the short, medium, and long term for American economic development. So it's going to result in some pain on the American markets. I do agree with Trump on that. But ultimately, I think the Americans will level out. As far as the Chinese saying that we should join them in in the war on Trump's tariffs, that is completely laughable, considering the way the Chinese have treated us like a very junior partner. They have done salami slicing of our territory. They have tried to inundate our market with their steel and other products, etc. I am sure that our government and our Prime Minister will not fall into this Chinese trap. They will negotiate as we are doing now, and we will find a way out with the Americans in our own way, in accordance with our national interests, which certainly does not coincide in any way whatsoever with China's national interests. We should not fall into this trap. We should just distance ourselves from these overtures, which are purely opportunistic, and they are not genuine, and they will be withdrawn the moment the Chinese feel that they're back on comfortable ground again. Megha.
Andrew Leung also on the telecast with me. Andrew, let's hear it from you about what is the impact that the Chinese market is facing in wake of the 104% tariffs that have been imposed by the US administration, and also what is it that the Chinese government is going to achieve by levying additional tariffs up to the tune of 84% on American goods?
Well, I mean, let's face it, President Trump is lashing out left, right, and center across the world, including Americans' closest allies, and not just its rivals like China, because he believes that tariffs is a beautiful weapon to get what American wants or wants to impose on other nations. The ridiculous thing is that he is ignoring all these tariffs, ignoring the huge trade surplus, not deficit, surplus in trade and services. The United States enjoys huge surplus in services against other countries, but that side of the equation is totally ignored in what is now a bullying tactic. And there is no way that China would succumb to it because the reality remains that United States economy is far more dependent, or the not the economy so much, but the consumers and the various kind of products in the United States are far more dependent on China than the other way around. And of course, China remains the biggest purchaser of American agricultural products, and of course, the largest purchaser of Boeing aircraft. Not to mention that China, of course, plays a key role in helping this fentanyl drugs tsunami in the United States. So China has got many cards up its sleeves, and there is no way that China would succumb to this kind of bullying, because once you agree to certain kind of bullying tactics, the United States is going to demand more. As in the case, in fact, what Trump said to the European Union. I mean, even the European Union wanted to lower tariffs to zero. He's not too happy with it. So I think that and of course the American market is a big one for China, but the importance of the American market to China has declined in recent years. In 2018, the United States market, export market, accounts for something like 19% overall of China's export market. It has now declined to something like 14%. So, and where is you look at the American consumer products, almost, if you go to the American supermarkets, almost everything is made in China. If China stops exporting all these products, well, you can see that there's huge outcry, but it's not possible to find any adequate substitute.
Okay, so then how do you think it's justified that countries across spectrum end up imposing 50%, 100%, even 200% tariffs on American products?
It's not 200%. China is very proportional. when the United States imposes 54% on China before the latest additional 54%, China's retaliatory tariffs is only 34%. Now the Trump administration is imposing an additional 50%, making 104%. And China's response is that, well, you lob 50% extra on us, naturally we'll fight back with 50%. 50% plus 34% is 84%. But it's not just the percentages. It's a total lack of justification, because trade is no one country can produce all the stuff, and that's why Adam Smith formula of comparative advantage. And of course, if you even you take into account services, as economy develops, there are more services, they can make more money. For example, they have a large number of patents, and these patents are earning huge sums of money, and so America enjoys a surplus in technology patents and various other professional services. But that side of the equation is totally ignored. And where is the ridiculous thing is that these tariffs apply to even very poor countries like Madagascar. But what does Madagascar export to the United States? Is vanilla, and also agricultural products and some minerals. And then the Madagascar is a very poor country, with only less than 1.5 US dollars per day. But how can a country like Madagascar enjoy the so-called a surplus by selling all these vanilla and agricultural products, restore the
Okay, fair enough. You made a point. You've made a point. Mitali, I'm going to come to you. And talking about barring European Union and China, the remaining 50 countries where tariffs have been imposed by America are desiring to negotiate some sort of a tariff deal with America so that the Americans reduce the tariffs and they in turn cut the rates that they impose on the American goods. Why do you think? Do you think because the Chinese and the European Union have the heft to fight it out with the Americans, while the rest don't really want to get entangled in this tariff and counter-tariff war?
No, absolutely. I mean, see, for any country at this point in time, negotiations are in their natural, and their national interest. Many of the countries who don't want to pick sides. What is evident today, in the declaration of these massive, mammothic tariffs that we haven't seen in the last, more than 4 or 5 decades, is that the tensions that were simmering between the US and China and over China's rise as a major economy and the fact that the US became so dependent on China, there are a number of economic tensions that have been simmering between the two countries, and today they're out in the open. And it's almost like a Cold War era is starting to come in again, where countries are being told either you can be part of the supply chains that are led by the US or the supply chains that are led by the Chinese, and you can no longer do business with both of them. In some ways, this is the messaging that's starting to come out. And in that context, there are a number of countries, particularly countries which are based in Latin America, particularly countries in Middle East, East Asia, which may want to look at their options before picking a side. And I'm pretty sure while President Trump is announcing that 50 countries have gotten in touch with him for negotiations, I'm sure an equally large number of countries may have gotten in touch with the People's Republic of China for negotiation as well. So, definitely this is dividing the world in a way that we haven't seen before. And it's not in the best interest of the poorest people of the world, because the ones who are suffering from these tariffs are people who are daily wage workers who are dependent on, the trade for their livelihood. Think about those 30,000 denim sector workers in Lesotho, who are not sure whether they'll have a job tomorrow or not, because they don't know where the orders are going to come from. So at the end of the day, we are moving from a very highly interconnected trade first world to a world where each country has to look out for themselves and each country has to negotiate in their own best national interest.
Okay.
And that's the picture that's coming out today.
Okay. I also have with me Irina Sukumen. And Irina, you know, there's been a bloodbath in the global stock markets, but do you think there is any likelihood in the coming days, at least before the end of the week, that markets stabilize? And more importantly, do you think the Asian markets are going to stabilize much faster than the European markets?
Thank you for your question. I'm afraid that in the US, I don't think the market will stabilize because they are reacting very quickly to announcements which are themselves are not very stable. They went up when once there appeared to be a hope of a settlement with the European Union. Trump quickly negated that idea. They crashed. There's also speculation that some of these trade wars on the scale that they've announced were intended to cause market pain, and which allowed some people, particularly those buying the stocks, to benefit from these policies in the short term, regardless of the long-term economic effect. And if that is the case, and Trump, in the beginning of his term, praised volatility as a center of his policies overall, if this is indeed a center of the president's policies, then he is inclined to continue policies that would cause volatility in the markets, because that's what he wants to begin with. And for that reason, I also think that in Asia there is a high likelihood of stabilization, especially if some of the Asian countries do start gravitating towards China and other alternative markets, and away from dependency on US products. China itself has prepared for this possibility since Trump's first term, when there was a smaller scale bilateral trade war. It has already started migrating its products to other markets, and the measures it has undertaken against the United States have been very thoughtful and very intentional. They were not just simply tit for tat reciprocal tariffs, but they specifically targeted both the industries and companies that are close, very much a part of Trump's own political base, affecting states, affecting sectors, and affecting even individuals, former economic advisors for Trump. So that is likely to hit very hard in the US, and of course not so hard in Asia.
Okay, all right. Ambassador Mukherjee, now the very idea that Trump has hit out at countries across spectrum is that he wants to manufacture in America, build in America, make in America. He wants companies across Taiwan and in Malaysia and in other parts of the world to come and set up shop in America. How feasible is it for a company like the TSMC in Taiwan, who's building semiconductors and chips and so on and so forth, to shift its supply chains and set up plants in America?
Well, when you are looking at complete economic destruction, you have to prepare for the worst. So I have been told that, in fact, many are planning to move to the United States. As far as semiconductors is concerned, that's not an issue at all. There's a lot of cooperation between Taiwan and the United States. And in fact, it's probably safer to move the semiconductor industry from Taiwan to United States in case there is a Chinese takeover of Taiwan. So even from the perspective of global security of semiconductors, and from India's perspective, it would be much better for semiconductors to move to United States. The same would be true for the drone industry. As far as India is concerned, Megha, we are very close to a complete trade deal with the United States. We are working out a separate trade deal with the European Union. We are working out a trade deal with the United Kingdom. We have no intention of moving to China for a trade deal. We have been trying for the last 5 years to de-link ourselves from Chinese products, because there has been a tendency on the part of the Chinese to dump stuff on our markets, which is to the detriment of our industries. One example I can give you straight away is the steel industry, which has been complaining for the last 5 years about the dumping of Chinese products which have had a detrimental effect on the Indian steel industry. So, as far as we are concerned, we have a completely different approach. But there is no doubt that this kind of volatility in the market, and I listened very carefully to what Madame Irina said, and she's right, that volatility in the market in the short run may benefit some unscrupulous business people who are trying to take advantage. But in the medium and long term, there is no doubt, as our colleague also, Mr. Andrew said, that you should not weaponize tariffs because it goes against the whole principle of free trade and WTO. Which brings me to the next question, Megha, which is we have a World Trade Organization, we have a Director General of WTO. What has the WTO said on this matter? Not one word. So is the WTO on life support system that they have not said a single word on tariffs?
Right.
They have not given any advice, etc. Clearly, it is very clear that, like the UN Security Council, the WTO is on life support, and it's not a good situation for either.
Yeah, I mean, and also, you know, just a few months ago, the European Union had come out and imposed some 300 to 400% tariffs on Chinese auto sector, dissuading autos, dissuading cars from being exported to European Union countries. And the same diatribe had been put up by China that, you know, why is it that the WTO is not adhering to the trade norms, the international trade norms, and I wonder why is it that there was not a hue and cry created across the globe for such sort of sanctions and imposition of tariffs that had been made by European Union. But Andrew, I'm going to come to you about China specifically, and because this is looking more and more like a trade war between China and America more than anything, and talking about how successful do you think is China going to be in identifying new markets to sell its products and services?
Well, I think that with the exception of the Trump administration, I think the entire world is in support of a more rule-based system. But what Trump has been doing is really tearing up this system, which is lying in tatters. As far as the WTO is concerned, for example, Trump is already almost, you know, sort of destroying it by not fielding judges for the dispute resolution system. So without that peace resolution system, all the kind of even judgments cannot be carried out appropriately, you know, through the bilateral negotiations. So the WTO is now also lying in gasping for air. Likewise, the Trump administration is drawing from other international institutions like the WHO. Now, as far as China is concerned, we have a curious situation whereby the creator and defender of the so-called rule-based system or the liberal world order, i.e. the United States, is trying to destroy it, whereas the perceived and vilified challenger like China is trying to defend it. But I think, coming back to your question, as I said in the beginning, China is very powerful weapons up its sleeve. For example, one big thing that worries the Trump administration and the American government is this tsunami of fentanyl. And China's been playing a role, but now with the relationship being plummeting, there is every chance that Beijing would refuse to cooperate with the United States on fentanyl. And that would cause a tremendous upheaval in the United States society.
Yeah, but the very question that whether China was really indeed cooperating with America in stopping the smuggling of fentanyl into American shores, keeping in mind that that's where the trade routes had been built, America into Mexico and Canada, and then getting inside the territory of America, and therefore strong measures. That's where the tariff was actually started off with the strong measures being taken by the Trump administration against smuggling of fentanyl that came in from China. I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast, and thanks for watching NewsX.